So, you should by now be very familiar with this table. We spent time breaking down every single column, what it means, where they come from, and why it matters to a specialist insurance business. Now we are going to put it to work. But before we dive in, let me set the scene with a question that comes up time and time again when I am sitting with claims and finance teams during a data project. How confident are you that your claims figures and your finance figures are telling the same story at any given moment? Think about that for a second. In the London market, your claims team is typically working out of a claims management system. Your finance team is working out of a ledger or an accounting platform. And somewhere in between those two worlds, there is almost always a gap, a figure that doesn't match, a settlement that appears in one system but not the other, a reserve that has been updated on the claims side but hasn't fed through to finance yet. And the problem is not that people are doing anything wrong. The problem is that both teams are looking at different cuts of the same data. And when your bordereau submission is due, or when a senior stakeholder asks for the numbers, somebody has to manually reconcile those two pictures. And that takes time that nobody has. What I am going to show you right now is how to change that. We are going to use Claude AI for Excel to build a settlement-level reconciliation view directly from the data in our table that brings paid claims and outstanding reserves together in one place, flags the positions that need attention, and gives every team the same number to work from. Let's go. The first thing I want to do is get a portfolio-level summary. I want to understand the total paid claims position and the total outstanding reserves across the entire book. So let me type in the first prompt now. Summarize the total paid claim and outstanding amounts across all settlement IDs. Highlight any settlements where outstanding is greater than paid claim and flag these as potentially under-reserved positions. And there we go. Now what Claude has done here is really interesting, and this is the bit I want you to pay attention to. It has not just given us totals, it has actually gone through every single settlement row and compared the outstanding reserve against what has already been paid. And anywhere it finds a settlement where the outstanding amount is larger than the paid claim, it has flagged that as a potentially under-reserved position. Now in a real London markets context, that flag is significant. An under-reserved settlement means the insurer may be holding less capital against that claim than the expected final cost warrants. And if that pattern appears across multiple settlements simultaneously, that is the kind of thing that needs to be in front of your reserving actuary before it becomes a regulatory conversation. With a traditional approach, finding those positions would mean writing a formula, filtering a pivot table, cross-referencing a separate report. We just did it in one prompt. Right, let me now take this a step further, because a summary flag is useful, but what I really want is a structured table I can actually present, something I can drop into a management pack or share with the finance team without any further formatting work. So let me type the second prompt. Create a table showing settlement ID, paid claim outstanding, and a calculated incurred loss column, paid claim plus outstanding, sort by incurred loss descending to identify the largest open exposures. Perfect. So what we now have is a clean, ranked table, settlement ID down the left, paid claim, outstanding, and then a calculated incurred loss column, which is simply the two added together, giving us the total financial exposure on each settlement, paid and unpaid combined. And critically, it is sorted from largest to smallest. So the very first row in this table is the settlement with the biggest total exposure on the entire book. Your claims director, your CFO, your lead underwriter, whoever picks this up, immediately knows where to look first. That is the power of settlement-level data. You are not managing averages or aggregates. You are looking at individual positions, ranked by financial exposure, with no ambiguity about which ones matter most, and we built that in two prompts. Now, I want to just take a moment before we move on, because I think it is worth stepping back and appreciating what just happened. We started with a raw data table, 15 columns, 2,000 settlements, numbers that, on their own, tell you very little. In two prompts, We have a portfolio-level reserve adequacy summary, a ranked exposure table with a calculated incurred loss column, and a set of flagged positions that your reserving team needs to look at. No formula writing, no pivot table wrangling, no cross-referencing between systems. But before we move on, I want to highlight one important point, because what Claude just did looked effortless, and it was. But that effortlessness did not come from nowhere. Think about what those two prompts were actually working with. PaidClaim is not a raw transaction field. It is the result of a T-school view that filters specifically for posting type codes CM and RF, excludes anything flagged as a fee, and excludes any transaction linked to an apportionment settlement ID. Every one of those conditions had to be designed, written, and tested long before anyone opened Excel. And Outstanding uses the OS posting code, applying the same is-fee logic to separate loss reserves from fee reserves at source. That separation is what made our reserve adequacy comparison meaningful. Without it, the flag Claude produced would have been comparing the wrong numbers, and nobody would have known. That is the data engineering underneath this, the view that defines exactly what PaidClaim means and exactly what Outstanding means, consistently across every single one of those 2,000 rows. Once that definition exists, once the data has been shaped correctly at source, Claude AI for Excel can reconcile, rank, and flag a portfolio in 2 prompts. The prompt is easy. The column meaning exactly what it says every time. That is the hard part. And that is data engineering. In the next section, we are going to move on to apportionment and coinsurance transparency, which is where things get really interesting, because this is where the London market's unique placement structure starts to show up in the data, and where the data engineering underneath it becomes even more important. Before you go, everything you have just seen is available for you to use right now. Click on the link in the description and you'll get the exact prompts I used in this video, word for word, so you can run exactly the same reconciliation analysis on your own claims data without starting from scratch. You'll get the data model that sits underneath it, the structured claims view that tells Claude AI for Excel exactly what PaidClaim means, what Outstanding means, and why every number it produces can be trusted. You'll also get the dataset itself, 2,000 settlements of precisely modeled claims data, so you can see the outputs before you ever connect your own systems. Everything is in the description. One click, no cost, just the tools you need to make sure your claims figures are never lying to you again.